Welcome to the Just Third Way podcast, where we ask the question, would you rather own or be owned? Brought to you by the Center for Economic and Social Justice at CESJ.org. Hello, thanks for tuning in. Today we have a special guest, Sasha Miltreiger. Hello, Sasha.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us. Sasha
Thank you
is
for
our
having me.
CESJ intern, and she's working on a project to compare the Capital Homestead Act with the Universal Basic Income proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's great. That is a good project because so many young people are interested in the subject of the universal basic income. And I know we'll get into that some more, but I just wanted to ask you first a little bit about your background. So you're a student?
Yes, I'm a student at the University of Alberta. I'll be going into my fourth year in September and I'm majoring in political science.
Oh, that's great. That's
hmm
great. What made you decide to go for political science?
I when I entered university right after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know that I love social studies and I loved history. Everything that I learned in high school, I was like, I want to continue this for sure. So that's kind of what pushed me down the political science path.
Oh, that's great.
hmm
Yeah, one of my sons kind of talks like that about how he felt, and he's thinking about switching to poli sci.
hmm
He was actually in the debate club. Did you ever try any of that?
Yeah, I actually did some debate in high school too, which I really liked.
Well, I tell you, it was very different than what I expected. I was surprised at how they speak rapidly, try to get, as much information in at a time or what. Is that how
hmm
you guys did it?
Yeah, it was kind of like nerve-wracking. It was hard because our teacher was so hard on us and she made sure you have to get all your points, you have to be respectful, like all these things, but I thought it was a really helpful class. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that's interesting
hmm
because I know looking back, sometimes I think about the teachers that pushed me hard. And although it was difficult at the time, I probably learned a little more in those classes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's definitely a good experience when you have a teacher who at least cares. I think there's a balance that they can, pull off that's sort of a combination of having a little bit of fun involved and lightheartedness, but able to do it all. And every now and then you have one like that, and that's really perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right, right. So I was thinking about the fact that you're from Canada, and that's as far as the debate type stuff. They have a parliamentary procedure that's like Great Britain, if I'm not mistaken, where there's sort of interrupt each other, laugh, and it's like a raucous debate almost in their actual government. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have something called question period, and it's really entertaining to watch because it's basically just leaders of each party and other cabinet ministers just kind of flinging back and forth insults to each other.
Right.
It's not productive. It doesn't really achieve anything, but it's entertaining to watch. So
You
yeah,
know, it doesn't pass any laws or
no,
anything, but
no, it
I bet
doesn't
it
pass
kind of
any laws.
gets
It doesn't talk about policy. Like it really is just the attacks get really personal sometimes. It's just entertaining to watch, really.
interesting. I was going to say it might not be constructive in getting a law passed, but it probably gets some of that out of their system so they can get
Yeah.
to business.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to have to look some of that up because I've seen a few clips here and there, and they were very funny. So I'm gonna try to watch it more often, and
hmm
maybe we could put some of that on the podcast sometime. That people might find that very interesting. In fact, I might be able to find an interesting clip for this podcast. So you never know how it'll come out after I get through putting it together.
Yeah, there are tons of clips on YouTube. They're just a couple minutes long, some of them. So I would recommend people watch them. It's kind of funny.
Okay, great. Yeah, and speaking of the podcast, hey, thanks for already contributing to it by recording a conversation with Norm. That was a
Mhm.
great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, of course.
So how did you find out about CESJ and the Just Third Way?
So the way I got connected with CESJ is I applied for the internship program in DC with my university, and one of the previous people that was involved with CESJ was her name's Kimberly Tyson. She's the liaison for like short-term studying abroad and internships in DC. So she got CESJ connected with the internship program, and then I read about the organization. I really liked what it mean. I really like what the Just Third Way means. So then I went through the interview process, and yeah, that's kind of how I got connected with CESJ.
Oh, that's great. That's
Hmm.
great. And I think that it is good that we are making sort of inroads into organized academia
Hmm.
so that there are opportunities for, students to learn about our ideas that way. But at the same time, it's almost disappointing that that's the only way you ever heard about us,
Yeah.
because what we want to do is have people coming up through high school or talking on Facebook, and you know that's the thing that we're needing to figure out is how to reach people like you that aren't political science majors.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know how to do that, but if you have any ideas, we certainly are, our ears are open.
Hmm.
I think one thing is to make some hard hitting videos and well produced videos explaining the concepts and things like that. I'm sure you would agree that would be good.
Yeah, I definitely think that'd be useful.
We're going to have to do that for sure. So, why did you decide to do the actual project that you're working on, comparing the UBI and Just Third Way?
So in that, I'm comparing UBI and the Just Third Way. I'm also comparing both of those two things to the Austrian School of Economics, like the
Oh,
traditional.
that's right.
Yeah, so that just type of thought. And I thought it was interesting. I was talking with Dawn, and we were talking about the age of automation and how it's basically inevitable that so many of the jobs that used to be done with human labor are now just being completed by robots. And increasingly so, there's just so many robotic instruments that are taking over jobs in that sense. So I think with universal basic income, that seems like the only quote unquote solution that has been presented. But I think kind of implementing the Just Third Way and showing that's the UBI is not the only way to go about it, and
Right.
showing people that the Just Third Way has a different approach in terms of ownership. So that's why I was really interested in working on a project like that, because it's something that in the future will inevitably it'll come to this question of how will people earn an income. So that's kind of why I was interested in a project like that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I see what you're saying because once start delving into these subjects and you see, I mean, I have to admit there's a certain amount of logic to the universal basic income because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at government taking these just, massive amounts of tax monies and using them for their huge projects and contracting and salaries and benefits for the government, and of course that's not even getting into the things that we suspect that are happening that we don't even know what's happening, and so we're waiting for them to actually get welfare money to people who are just impoverished and everything. Well, people are starting to look at that and say, hey, what if we just said, no, don't give it to the bureaucrats, just give it to everybody, I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
it almost makes more sense.
Yeah, there's a
That-
part of it that from just looking at it at first glance, it kind of makes sense, but then it also is like it's putting so much power back into the hands of government, which people are never happy with.
True,
Yeah.
true. And that is one reason why I'm glad that you're interested in our stuff because it certainly is a way to, reduce the involvement of government if the private sector, you just basically set up a structure that's designated by law so that the private sector does it. And I think that's the proper role of government. And I'm glad you're getting exposed to that.
Hmm.
So. That is good. So, is this internship and project actually like a credit thing? Or I was curious about how that internship related to the university, going back and forth. Do they grade you on it? I mean, how does that work?
No, I don't get graded on this internship or this portion of my I guess bachelor's degree, but
Okay.
I will get work experience credits, and I'm able to actually get a certificate of international learning, and you get that if you there's a couple of different ways to receive that certificate, but if you've participated in an international internship, stuff like that. So it's definitely there are no kind of credits allotted to it, but there are benefits to doing something like this. And I'm just really happy that I've had the time and the opportunity to come here.
Well, that's great. So, how long is your total stay?
It's just over 10 weeks, about 10 and a half weeks.
So that took up all of your. It's going to end up taking up all of your summer, basically.
Yeah, I don't go back to school till September, so I'll still have the whole month of August to have a
Oh,
little bit of
that's
a
good.
vacation. Yeah.
So, just curious, why did you choose like to try to find something like this in Washington as opposed to, Ottawa, the capital? That's the capital of the Canadian national government, right?
Yeah, that's the capital. Um, just in terms of choosing Washington, it just seems like there's so much more opportunity here. I've always wanted to come to Washington, D.C., and I feel like this was a place where I'm like, okay, I can come, I can experience the city, but then I can also do something that's related to what I want to be working on and have a career in the future. So I do want to go to Ottawa. I am interested in going to Ottawa one day. I've actually never been, but this opportunity just presented itself, and I was excited to take it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, if you were to stay longer or have to come back and forth, and it would be a lot warmer in the winter here than,
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm guessing. Well,
Yeah.
then again, Alberta might not be too bad. Do you
Oh no,
guys get rough
Alberta,
winters up there?
Alberta is so cold. So cold.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
there's parts of Canada where it's like people don't realize it's not as cold as you think, like, Vancouver.
Yeah, British Columbia is pretty warm and it's right by the ocean, so that's nice, but Alberta gets terribly cold. Like it's
Oh,
unbearable. It's unbearable sometimes. Yeah.
I hear you. How do you make it through those winters?
I don't know, honestly. Like I don't know.
Stay inside, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's good. Well, as a member of the next generation, do you have any suggestions for ways that we can reach more young people?
I really like what CESJ is doing with the idea of Justice University. And as you were saying earlier, just like making videos or making certain types of media that people can relate to. I think that there's such a focus in academia on just going to school, getting a degree, getting a job, like just
Very true.
one step after the other. It's just a path to this one goal that everybody, it seems like that's the only way to be successful, I guess. So I think,
So, what we
sorry,
could
go ahead.
do is actually make videos and have them titled, something like, "Are you bored with the concept of birth, school, work, death?" or
Yeah,
something like
yeah. Yeah, it could be something like that. Yeah, definitely.
That's probably way before your time, but there was a rock song called "Birth, School, Work, Death." I used to like it. And it does. It talks about, we're all in the grind and, you know, society's kind of coming around and people are realizing that it's not working right. It's like people spend all their time, to try to pay taxes so maintain the corrupt system and stuff.
hmm
Yeah, that's good. We need to market to that sentiment for sure. That's a great suggestion.
I was just gonna say, I think there are a lot of people that are definitely um, either fed up by the way that it is, or just they don't like the path that they've been kind of forced to take, but they don't see a solution outside of what has been taught to them.
Right.
hmm
That's true. And that is the key too, is, I'm not trying to limit the addition of, economic thought to the just third way in our education. I think people should learn every significant proposal, out there and let them weigh for themselves, just sit around and if you start teaching these things, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years old, middle school, early high school, then by the time, they graduate high school, they've had some time to actually think about these things. I
Hmm.
mean, that's just my idea.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's an aspect of critical thinking that is often missing from academia.
Yes.
Hmm.
And everything this is how it already is, and this is how it's always going to be, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah.
So that's the problem. And that's what would change.
Hmm.
I had a thought about how the UBI, universal basic income, is becoming a buzzword and people are talking about it. So I had an idea. Maybe we should rename or market ours in some manner and call it universal dividend income or something like that. What do you think about that?
The thing about that, I understand where you're coming from, but the word that kind of scares me in that part is the universal still in the
Okay.
dividend income, because I feel a lot of the research that I've done on the universal basic income, there's still a lot of debate as to whether that should be just a minimum payment that would still require people to work in order to earn a living or to make a living. And then some people say that the universal basic income should be enough money so that you don't have to work and nobody in your family has to work either. So
Right.
I think I think just phrasing universal dividend income just sounds like every individual would get paid out the same. But I think in terms of ownership and like what a stakeholder owns, I think that it's a lot more individualized in
That's true.
each
That's true
company.
because what we're talking about is allowing people to have some freedom in like what they invest in.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's not going to be equal. I mean, some people are going to do better than others.
Hmm.
I need to look into how the phrase equal outcomes and things like that. Marx, I think, used some of that. Equal outcomes, people say not equal outcomes. In fact, that would be something that to appeal to young people is define all of these terms and, how the money comes in and goes out and things like that.
I think like when you hear universal basic income, or even if you heard universal dividend income, it sounds like it's striving for equal outcomes when we should be striving for equal opportunity.
That's the word, equal
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
See, you're schooling me. That's what I was trying to think of. That's excellent. Yeah, I get caught up in doing my daily jobs and things like that. I'm basically a small businessman, and each of the advocates of the just third way kind of has a different way of approaching it,
Hmm.
and the reason why we're interested in it. And my situation, I tried to start a business and it did good for a while and then it failed. And then the second one did the same thing. And, I was kind of doing the same stuff that I had been doing all along and I couldn't figure out. And, I was talking to people and they were like, it's the boom and the bust cycle. And I was saying, that doesn't make sense. Why do we
Hmm.
have to have that?
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I came into the movement, and also being somewhat of a libertarian in the past. I was a petitioner for the Libertarian Party way back in 1992. I was trying to get them on the ballot.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, we did succeed, but I found out it's very difficult to get people on the ballot in some states.
Hmm.
I remember Missouri was hard. I spent a lot of time there. They have, they considered to have strict ballot access laws, and that's just not right.
Hmm.
And then also, I kind of have a conservative Christian background, so I was thinking, do you have any questions for me as you explore these things, from something I might provide a different perspective on?
Hmm. I myself would identify as a more of a libertarian and a conservative Christian as well.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
So I would say, um, just I guess a question on your insights. Do you think that like which political party or which side of the political spectrum do you think would have an easier time with adopting the ideas of universal ownership?
It's really sad that the so-called Republicans aren't more open to it, but I
Uh-huh.
found that the Democrats in the United States do respond to it better. But I think that might be sort of a problem of communication because there is a way to convince people that, smaller government is not going to happen unless we have some sort of a institutional program, you know, and
Hmm.
that's the thing. We're defining things when we, say that. When I say we need to have an institutional program, and that means we need to have a law that says that the banking system, is owned by the people. And that's something that the knee jerk response from a libertarian or a Republican is, that's a government scheme. So we got to figure out a way, something's got to happen because people feel, especially more progressives and Democrats and things like that, that the only way to do things is government. And so because we're not educated on the other way, the just third way, we're constantly fighting that, and it causes government to grow and grow and grow. It's like a sort of a twisted backwards way to compromise, whereas they're not coming together and finding the true compromise. That's the way I feel about it, anyways.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
no,
that's the one thing is yes, it should be the conservatives and the Republicans that lead it because of the smaller government, you know?
mhm. I agree. I think as a more conservative individual, I can see that so many of the problems, and so many of the way that people think is that the government should solve everything, and
Right.
it's the government's job to step in and solve, unemployment and all these different things, and should provide so much money for social programs. But I think people need to realize that they have the ability to do that themselves.
Yes.
As
I
long as the barriers are lifted and the government can say we want people to um, preserve their own human dignity in that sense.
right. Well, I'm glad you're the one doing the project that you're doing because it sounds like you have a grasp of the concepts and why the just third way is a good, way to incorporate all of the elements of, what people need and individual liberty and smaller government and, incomes in a robotic uh, economy and, high technology and all of those things. So that is really good to hear. We've had a few interns that when I talk to them, they're still kind of, comparing everything as a possibility, and they almost want to take the position of a reporter
Hmm.
that's, describing the pros and cons of everything. But it sounds like, you're kind of leaning more toward, the just third way as the best way. So.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, we are glad to have you as, someone who is more or less a member of our movement and hope that we can work together and find ways to communicate to people of your, generation for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's definitely been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, it has been.
So I was curious, are you going to probably end up staying in Canada all your life? I don't even know. Maybe have you lived in Canada all your life?
Pretty much. Yeah. I wasn't born in Canada, but I've lived there since I was a toddler. So,
Oh,
um,
okay.
yeah, I can actually see myself moving to the States. I don't know if I'd necessarily come back here. I really like it here, but I honestly don't know if I can live with the cold that we get in Alberta for all my life.
Right. Maybe you could go to Vancouver.
Yeah, maybe. There's a lot
Uh,
of rain there though, so
it's kind of interesting to see how the politics of Canada lately have gone very progressive.
yeah, that's a lot of people. Our prime minister is very progressive. I know people aren't very happy with him, but we'll see. We have the federal election next year, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
I've read a lot of articles about people guessing that it'll swing back more conservative.
probably will.
Hmm.
Yeah, he is very, very liberal.
Hmm.
What do you think about the eyebrow controversy?
With like
Yeah,
which
they have pictures of your prime minister, and it looks like his eyebrow is falling off, like he has a fake eyebrow.
I haven't seen this. Oh,
Oh, that's
I
good that you haven't. That means you're not just constantly looking at your devices the way so many people. It's just in the last few days, and but I looked at it, and I think it's just the way the light is hitting
yeah.
his face.
Was this at the G7 summit or was this just somewhere a random
Yeah, I think it
picture?
was at the G7. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. He's probably just so scared of Trump and what the Mike Pompeo said about him. So,
Oh, okay. Well, that's one I didn't hear about.
oh
What?
yeah, Mike Pompeo said that there's a special place in hell for Justin Trudeau. Um,
Oh no. Well, that's diplomatic.
either at or after the G7. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
I don't know where we get these guys. I mean, I agree with some of the, goals that the Trump administration is doing,
Hmm.
but they are not diplomatic at all.
Yeah.
They're going to end up getting themselves kicked out of office if they're not a little more diplomatic.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you today. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I've enjoyed this too. Thank you.
Well, you have a great summer and call me anytime. And thanks for participating in the CESJ internship program.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.